Hello, and welcome to our safety meeting. Today's topic will be welding and cutting safety. The standards associated with this activity are found in Subpart J of 29 CFR 1926. First and foremost, we want to talk about the required personal protective equipment. Any personal protective equipment used for welding and cutting must meet the standards set forth in 29 CFR 1926 Subpart E, which is specific to personal protective equipment. The most vital portion is eye and face protection. This is in the form of a face shield. These face shields must be shaded specific for the task that is to be performed. The shading levels and the tasks associated with them can be found in Table E1 in Subpart E. There will also need to be respiratory protection, which is usually in the form of mechanical ventilation in the work area. But if that's not possible, then a personal respirator can be used. You will also need to have hearing protection, as welding operations can be quite loud. Additional safety items that you may need would be safety clothing, which can take the form of a fire-resistant bandana, and arm protection in the form of long sleeves, welding sleeves, or a welding jacket. You will also want to ensure that you have welding gloves, which are specifically designed for this purpose. A welding apron may also be useful to avoid burns on your clothing. You will also want to wear long pants without cuffs, as cuffs can catch molten metal and spalling. Leather boots are always advisable as well. An additional important item when talking about welding and cutting is fire prevention. In any case, the welded item should be moved to a secure location. If that's not possible, then all movable, flammable items in the area must be moved. Those items that are flammable and cannot be readily moved must be protected. You will always want to make sure that you have fire extinguishing equipment nearby that must be immediately available and in a state of readiness in the work area. You may also assign an employee to be a fire watch during the welding operation and shortly thereafter to ensure that a fire does not start. If the heat from your welding operation could be transferred to an adjacent area, either through a wall or a floor, then that area would also need to be adequately protected with the standards in Subpart J. We will now watch a short video to review these items and give us an overview for what's to come.
Every day, welders in various industries use high temperatures to shape metal. Sometimes the metal is bonded together, other times it's cut apart. Over the years, engineers have developed a variety of methods for welding. The combination of a spark, oxygen, and a flammable gas provide the energy for oxy-fuel cutting, welding, and brazing. High-voltage electricity, whether it's alone or used in tandem with various gases, powers arc welding. The first thing to do is to inspect your equipment. When you're working with an oxy-fuel unit, make sure your torch has the right tip for the job at hand. Examine the cylinder valves and fittings. These must be clean and clear before you connect the torch and hoses. Once everything's set up, apply a soap solution to check for gas leaks. Some problems can be solved by simply tightening the connection. Arc welding units also need to be checked out. Inspect the frame of the generator for proper grounding. Make sure the work lead and electrode lead are properly connected. And don't forget to examine cables for damaged insulation or bare conductors. If left unrepaired, these can cause a severe shock. The powerful ultraviolet and infrared light produced during welding operations is one of the first things people remember about welding. Unfortunately, this light can be extremely hazardous. If left unprotected, your eyes can suffer problems like the short-term discomfort of welder's flash. More serious injuries like burns to the retina can permanently damage your eyesight and may even cause blindness. Goggles fitted with specially tinted lenses must be worn during oxy-fuel cutting, welding, and brazing. These special lenses block hazardous light and help shield your eyes from molten spatter. Arc welding produces an intense light that requires even stronger protection. Here you'll need a helmet or hand shield. These are fitted with specially designed filters which screen out harmful light rays. In addition to protecting your eyes, the design and size of helmets and hand shields will prevent the light from burning your face, neck, and ears. Don't forget that safety glasses must still be worn underneath your helmet or hand shield for complete protection. Make sure all your protective equipment is in good condition before you start work. If you spot any imperfections, get a replacement. Hazardous light can affect those around you as well. Setting up protective screens will help shield other workers from the light generated while you weld. Hazardous fumes are a byproduct of many welding operations. Without proper ventilation, these fumes will collect and contaminate the air. You will need to protect yourself by using exhaust fans or other mechanical ventilation devices whenever you're welding with stainless steel, lead, mercury, fluorine compounds, zinc, cadmium, beryllium, and chemical cleaning compounds. It's especially important to use mechanical ventilation in rooms with less than 10,000 cubic feet of space per welder, where ceilings are lower than 16 feet, and in confined spaces where regular ventilation is blocked. Short periods of exposure to hazardous fumes can lead to irritation to the eyes, nose, and throat, even illnesses like metal fume fever. Repeated exposure over many years can lead to lung cancer and severe damage to the nervous system. To avoid these problems, you must maintain a healthy breathing zone. This means getting lots of air flowing around your work. If you're using screens or other barriers, leave enough space between the barrier and the floor to allow for good air movement. Sometimes even mechanical ventilation devices aren't enough to protect you. In these situations, you'll need a respirator. But before you can wear a respirator on the job, you must be fit tested. This ensures that the respirator you're wearing is the right size for your face. It's important to remember that respirators are fitted with filters that capture hazardous fumes. Moving pieces of metal around and banging away at slag are just two of the things that can make a welding environment very noisy. If you don't take the proper precautions, you can be exposed to noise levels that can result in real problems. Short periods of exposure to loud noise can lead to fatigue and irritability. Extended exposure can lead to partial or even total hearing loss. To guard against these hazards, you need to protect yourself with earplugs, canal caps, or earmuffs. This will reduce the noise that your ears are exposed to. If you have any questions about which hearing protection you should use, ask your supervisor. Of course, to be completely safe, there are a few other things you'll need to wear as well. Welding can produce a lot of heat. To protect your hands, you need a good, strong pair of leather gloves. Many welding gloves offer additional protection in the form of welting. Here, an extra piece of leather is sewn into the finger and palm of the glove. This extra layer of leather protects the threads in the glove from getting burned by intense heat. But even with this extra protection, you need to be careful. Never hold heated metal with your gloves. It can burn right through them. If you need to manipulate hot objects, use insulated clamps or other tools. The type of clothing you wear also plays a role in welding safely. Dress in natural fibers like cotton or wool. These are less likely to ignite than synthetic fibers. Wearing long sleeve shirts with closable collars will protect you from hazardous light. Remember, just like the ultraviolet light from the sun, the UV light from welding operations can burn your skin. Adding leather aprons and sleeves on top of what you're wearing will keep sparks from burning through your clothes. Another good idea is to wear high-top shoes. These keep sparks and molten metal away from your ankles and feet. Sparks, high temperatures, and flammable gases can all lead to fires. To combat the risk of fire, many facilities limit the areas where welding can take place. Never begin to weld unless your facility has authorized the work. This will confirm that the area you will be working in is considered safe for welding operations. Sparks are a byproduct of just about every welding operation. Preventing them from starting fires requires a concentrated effort. Before welding, remove anything that can burn from the area. It's especially important not to weld around combustible materials like wood, paper, or fuel. These ignite easily and can quickly burst into flames if they're exposed to sparks or high temperatures. Aerosol cans should also be removed from areas where welding is taking place. These cans hold gases that are under a lot of pressure. When they're exposed to intense heat, the gases will expand. This could cause the can to explode. If there are ignitable materials in the area that can't easily be moved, use guards or barriers to protect them from sparks and heat. Sweep up any debris that may be lying on the floor. It's best to sweep in a 35-foot radius, beginning at the spot where you're going to weld. In the event that a fire could still ignite, a trained fire watcher is required to stand by. This person should know the ins and outs of firefighting and will be ready to extinguish a fire if it breaks out. Remember, even after you're finished welding, the metal will still be very hot. Because of this, the fire watch must be maintained for at least a half an hour after welding operations have ended. Welding can be a powerful tool, but we need to respect the dangers that it presents. Let's review. Always check out your equipment before starting any welding job. Follow safe work practices. This way you will avoid accidents. Always wear the appropriate protective clothing and equipment. Keep your area well ventilated. Make sure the air you breathe is safe and clean. And work to prevent fires. Remove or shield any flammable objects in the welding area. Defeating the hazards that welding presents can be easy. All you have to do is follow the rules and work safely.
Transporting cylinders. One of the most important parts of transporting cylinders is the valve protection caps. Always make sure the valve protection cap is in place and secure when you're transporting cylinders. There is an exception to that, and that is if you're using a special carrier that's intended for this purpose, but for the most part, just make sure you have the valve protection cap in place when you're transporting the cylinder. Don't lift the cylinder from the valve protection cap ever. That's just not the way it's supposed to be lifted or carried, so that's super unsafe and it could cause any sorts of hazard. So just do it the right way and carry it how it should be. The valve protection cap should be in place when the cylinder is empty, so even after everything has been used out of the cylinder, it's the best idea and the safest way to do it is put your cylinder back on before you transport the cylinder. When you're using a powered vehicle to transport cylinders, always make sure the cylinder is upright. When you're hoisting a cylinder, secure it on a cradle, a sling board, or a pallet. This is just the safest way to do it. Do not use a magnet or a choker sling. When you're moving a cylinder by hand, just tilt it and roll them on their bottom edge, just kind of the bottom corner, and that'll just work best, and it's the safest way to do it. When your cylinders are frozen, like together, don't use a bar to pry them apart because that can damage the cylinder or cause it to have a hole or any other thing. The best way to do it is to use warm water just to thaw them a little bit and to get them apart, and it'll be a lot easier. But it says specifically not to use boiling water, so make sure you just use some warm water. Don't let the cylinders be dropped, struck, or strike each other. That's because you don't want them to be damaged in any way, whether it's dented or there's a hole in it, because it can have leakage or any other sort of hazard. So just make sure that they are treated carefully. And use a suitable cylinder truck, chain, or a steadying device to keep cylinders from falling over while in use. And that's just the same reason. You don't want it to be damaged or of any way, and so because that could cause any number of hazards. So just use those things to keep them in place while you're using the cylinder. So when you're storing cylinders indoors, there's 3 important things, and they have to be well protected, well ventilated, and in a dry location. And with the ventilation, along with that is just saying, like, it can't go any lockers or cupboards because they're not very well ventilated. It has to go in somewhere that's more open. They have to be stored at least 20 feet away from anything that's highly combustible, because if some sort of problem happens, we don't want anything else catching on fire or any other thing, and so the best way to do it is just 20 feet away. They have to be stored away from elevators, stairs, and gangways, because those are high traffic points, and we want these cylinders to be stored in places where there'll be fewer people, just to don't have to worry about as many hazards or anything in that sense. You want to pre-assign your storage place, because there are so many different expectations and rules about where you store your cylinders. You want to figure out where you're going to store them before and in advance, so that when it comes to it, you have a place and you don't have to worry about figuring out the correct place just in the moment. They have to be stored where they cannot be tipped over, accessed by unauthorized people, or damaged by passing or falling objects. And this is just the same kind of thing. Like, you have to figure out where you're going to put it before, so then you don't have these problems. And with oxygen cylinders, gas cylinders, and combustible materials, they should be kept at a minimum of 20 feet apart, or they can be separated by a non-combustible barrier that's at least 5 feet high with a fire-resistant rating of at least a half hour. And that's just the same kind of thing. You don't want one problem here just to escalate, adding on to something else and just creating one huge problem. It's better to contain it.
And go.
Hi everyone, my name is Mariana. I'm going to talk about placing cylinders, and we can find this information in the OSHA, this regulation over here that it's in the slide. Okay, so Aspen already talked a little bit about storing them, and the important things of placing them correctly is that we need to make sure we'll avoid any fire starters. So for that, we need to make sure that it's far away enough from any operation that could cause sparks, hot slags, or flame. And if that's not a possibility, then we need a fire-resistant shield to protect them. Okay, along the same lines, we need it to be safe from becoming part of an electrical circuit. And also, filled gas cylinders need to be placed with the valve end up whenever you're using it, and they will not be placed in a location where they could be subject again to open flames, hot metal, or other sources of artificial heat. And last, we need to make sure that cylinders that contain oxygen or acetylene, hopefully that's how you say it, or other fuel gas shall not be taken into confined spaces. And Aspen talked a little bit about it, so here's a bad example that both cylinders are stored together, and this is pretty small space that we can see. So we are going to avoid that. And then concerning treating the cylinders, we don't want our cylinders to be looking like this. So do not use them as rollers or supports, even if they're empty, okay? And no person other than the gas supplier can mix the gases in the cylinders. And last, do not use the damaged or defective cylinders. They can be very dangerous and that can happen very fast. So do not use them. There are other ways for us to have fun. Okay, so even if it looks like this, it's missing something and it's on the floor, it's not the way it's supposed to be, so don't play with it. Now we're going to watch a video of an accident that happened in a situation very similar to this one, and it will be a warning for us to avoid that, okay?
When a typical cylinder is filled to its design pressure of 2400 psi, it will contain almost 300 cubic feet of atmospheric pressure gas, or about 160 times the internal volume of the cylinder. This compression of gas represents a tremendous amount of stored energy. If the outlet valve is broken off, the sudden release of compressed gas can turn the cylinder into a missile with energy to shoot through a cinder block wall. In one reported incident, a damaged cylinder penetrated 2 sheet metal walls before becoming airborne and exiting through the roof. The tank reached an altitude of 140 feet before falling back through the building's roof a second time. When a steel cylinder becomes a projectile, it can move with great force, at high speeds, and in unpredictable directions, with the potential to cause serious or fatal injuries.
Traditionally, grounding is when you have a clamp or a cable connected to a ground source that will go to the earth. That's why we use the term ground. And it'll take any excess electricity and put it away into the earth so it doesn't interfere with what you're doing. In terms of welding, in arc welding, you have a torch and you'll have a ground clamp, and this ground clamp is connected to a table or what you are welding to complete the circuit, so you can put out as much electricity as possible in your welding torch. The clamp will complete the circuit, so you can shoot out all the electricity through your welding torch. So all welding machines, this is a pretty common one, will be equipped with a ground clamp and then your welding torch. And these are both the cables. It is recommended that you put your ground clamp on your what you're welding instead of on the potential table that you're welding the thing on, because if you have it on your table, you can come in contact with the table, or you can sweat on the table, and that will then complete the circuit with you, which is pretty dangerous, having all that electricity run through you. So these are 2 examples of welding clamps. This one twists on and then clamps on to your ground. These are ground clamps, and then you can use a magnet connected to your ground cable that can connect to this. And then here you have your ground cable with a traditional ground clamp. So in arc weld grounding, you really want to make sure that your clamp is in good condition. So here you can see that the clamp body has been burnt and the cable is no longer in good condition, and the lug is also not in good condition. Here you can see also this burnt body. This is a better looking clamp, but there's also problems with it. So a poor ground clamp can hinder the amount of voltage output you have on your torch. And that can be dangerous, not knowing how much voltage you're actually working with your torch. But for the clamp itself, there's 3 main parts. We have the body, which is this part, including the copper section. We have the lug and the jaw. The lug can become loose, so the cable isn't properly connected and things aren't moving properly. The body can corrode away over time, and also if you're using too high of voltage on your torch or on your machine with a ground clamp that isn't sufficient enough, it can burn your body. And then you also have the jaw, which is like the clamp, you know, like on your car, you have the jaw that will clamp on. And that can become broken or loose or just not be secured properly. You want this to be in as best condition as possible so you can get the most efficient current. And according to OSHA section 1915-56C6, all ground connections shall be inspected to ensure that they are mechanically strong and electrically adequate for the acquired current. So we also have welding and cutting equipment. The most common equipment includes your mask. When people think of welders, you think of the big mask and you think of the torch. So you have the mask. We have guns and torches for cutting. You'll have a plasma gun, and for welding you'll have traditional torches as shown in the previous slide. You also have PPE, which was shown in slides 1 and 3. That'll include a welding apron, a bandana, a mask, usually leather shoes, long pants, leather gloves, and hearing protection. Other equipment includes ground clamps, as we just saw, and holding clamps, such as C-clamps, and then angle grinders and metal brushes to cut metal and to clean it up after. And then there's also welding machines, which we just saw on the last slide and we'll see again. And then we have our oxygen and acetylene cylinders. We have hammers, including slag and ball peen, pliers, and then plasma cutters and torches. So these are just some examples of the equipment needed. So we'll have the helmet, which everyone kind of recognizes when you think of welding. We have an example of proper PPE. So we have pants, boots, torch, helmet, mask, safety glasses, bandana, and apron or jacket. We have our cylinders. This is a plasma cutting machine for cutting, and here we have welding C-clamps, a ground clamp, and a welding torch.
Hey, hope you all are surviving being confined to your apartments or your houses. Now I'm going to talk about how to survive being in a confined space. And I'm also going to talk about torches and how they relate to welding and safety. Just a reminder, confined space is defined by OSHA is a large enough space configured that the employee can bodily enter it, number one, and number two, has limited and restricted means of entry and exit, and number three, is not designed for the continuous employee occupancy. Next slide. So here are some of the OSHA requirements for confined spaces, or for welding in confined spaces. When sufficient ventilation cannot be obtained without blocking the means of access, employees in the confined space shall be protected by air lines and respirators in accordance with the required subpart E of this part. An employee on the outside, such as of a confined space, shall be assigned to maintain communications with those working in to aid them in an emergency. Lifelines are required when a welder must enter a manhole. Safety belts and lifelines shall be attached to the body so that if they need to be pulled out in an emergency, they're not going to turn sideways. They're going to go out and they're not going to get jammed in the exit hole. So we better not be wearing suspenders. That will not work. An attendant with pre-planned rescue procedure shall be stationed outside and observe the welding at all times. That's a very important part of welding in confined spaces. Here you can see a picture of a diagram of welding in confined spaces. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about torches. There are two types of main torches. There's a welding and a cutting torch. You can see the picture for more details. And then fuel gas is an important thing to remember. shall, that means it's a commandment by OSHA, should never be used from cylinders through torches. Torches shall be inspected daily. And let's see, portable generators shall be located at a safe distance so that they are not exposed to sparks or misdirection of the torch flame. And here's just some important numbers to remember. We believe in numbers when it comes to safety. So it says where station outlets are equipped with approved backflow and flashback protective devices, as many as 4 torches may be supplied from one station outlet through rigid piping, provided each outlet from such piping is equipped with a shutoff valve and provided fuel gas capacity of 1 torch does not exceed 15 cubic feet.
Hi everyone, it's Mariana again, and now we're going to review and have our Kahoot. Okay, so I know you can't join me, so here I am, one and only, because we need someone to be able to play the game, and that's me, but I'm not gonna be clicking any answers, but we can start. So let's go. Our first question is, how often should torches be inspected? And our options are beginning of each work shift, weekly, daily, or monthly. Well, it's the beginning of each work shift, as you can see. Hopefully you got that one right. If you didn't, now you know when you remember the beginning of each work shift we need to do this. Don't answer. Okay, they need time. Okay, let's see. Wow, one and only is killing it. Okay, when welding near flammable objects, do you move what you're welding or what's flammable? Okay, options are, you're good, move nothing, move what you're welding, move the flammable object, or move both of them. So take your time. Take your time. At least try to guess it. Don't skip my video. Okay, and it's move what you're welding. Awesome, that's great.
Dang it.
All right, next one. All right, true or false? Lifelines are required when welding in confined spaces such as manholes. False or true? Hey, this one I don't think you can answer. Yeah, this one is true. You do need it, so you're safe and you're good. Okay. Awesome. Next question is number 4. When is ventilation not required? Okay. First option: in an open space, welding or cutting metals that are non-toxic, when an inert gas is not used, or all of the above. All of the above, yes! I hope you got it. If you didn't, remember now to not be stressed. If you're in one of the situations, ventilation is not required, but if you feel that it's needed, then come talk to us and you'll be good. Okay, next one. 5th question. How close does a fire extinguisher have to be when welding or cutting? Okay, 6 feet, the magical number, immediately available, close by, or within sight. Immediately available. You want that ASAP because if there is a fire and you want to be safe. So make sure there is a fire extinguisher immediately available close to you. Okay? Our last question is, what is not required PPE when welding or cutting? This is a very tricky one. Okay? Our options are pants without cuffs, insulated gloves, steel-toe boots, and face mask. Which one is it? Steel-toe boots is the right one. I hope you got it right. It's not required, but extremely necessary, especially around cylinders, heavy things. You just want to be safe. And that's it. We hope you got anything that you wanted to know. If you have any questions, please let us know and we'll help you find the answers, okay?